and Bert Flack would do as he was told. Bert, if he thought that was right, Bert was very, very English. And if he thought he could turn one over on any of the opposition, he would prepare that pitch. Unbelievably difficult. Now, I did the job for 3 years. He had no chance of going anywhere and saying, I'd like that sort of pitch. And I guess that's what Duncan Fletcher says now.
Yeah, absolutely. But in 1956, there was a suspicion, obviously, that instructions had been issued to the groundsman. But Bert never said a word, did he, for years, until eventually he was able to admit that someone had quietly asked him to do something about it.
Well, he never actually confessed, but he dropped a few hints to convey that it had been a dodgy one. But no, it worked out very well. I mean, Jim's in the record books, and so good man.
Yeah, now the other man, of course, the man on the other end, again, that was touched on in the piece, Tony Locke, got more and more frustrated, didn't he, through the game?
Yes, I'm afraid so. But they never got
Slow
on.
left-arm spinner.
They didn't get on, basically, because Tony Locke was 7 years younger, and he looked up to Jim, and he was a sort of country boy from Limpsfield and Chart, whereas Jim was a bit more savvy and more intelligent. And when the game started, Jim found himself on the wrong end, so he insisted on going to the Stretford end. So poor old Locke bowled in the wind and the bad end, and he got more and more frustrated, bowled quicker, the ball was rising. And when at the end, he went off and didn't even have a shower, put his clothes on and cleared off, and didn't even congratulate Jim, which so it's very sad. But a few years later, they got to know each other a bit better, and in the end, Jim used to stay with Tony Locke in Perth. And in fact, Tony Locke wrote a tremendous eulogy about him in the Surrey magazine afterwards. Very tragic that Tony Locke died in such tragic circumstances.
Now, what about the Australian batsmen in this game in 56? Because I mean, it's hard to obviously gauge quite how much the ball was turning or conditions by looking at the black and white pictures there. It strikes me that techniques have changed a bit since then.
Shocking. Yeah, their techniques in those days were shocking. They were all on the back foot when they should have been much more forward. The only one who played forward was Colin McDonald. He wasn't a front foot player, but he told a very interesting story. I said, how did you change your technique overnight? And he said, when I was about 15, 16, I was at a school, and the teacher was a leg spin bowler. And he spent hours bowling to me in the nets, and he said he coached me to get onto the front foot. So when he appeared here, and I think he was in his 30s, so 20 odd years later, he recalled what had happened, and he switched to this different technique. He batted 8.5 hours, and was the only one who stood up to Jim. Yeah,
we've got a former coach on my right, of course. What would you have said to him?
Well, the one thing, if I can recall, in that era, it would be frowned upon to sweep, and it seemed absolutely tailor-made for the sweep. And I do remember when I started playing in the early 60s, you weren't actually encouraged to sweep, whereas a sweep shot against that sort of bowling would have been very productive. Number one, he'd have got rid of 2 or 3 fielders. They wouldn't have been encroached round the bat all the time. And so that would have been a tactic. And I think since then, and you'll remember that we'd go in meetings to go to Australia, and they're not good against off-spin, and it was all because of that. They became, terrific players against off-spin, but it was all because of that game. Oh, they can't play off-spin. They couldn't actually play Jim Laker, a very fine bowler.
And another thing about that game, there was a lot of bad weather around, wasn't there? So what we've come to know as traditional Manchester weather. We've had plenty of sunshine here up until this final afternoon in this game, but a lot of bad weather around. So uncovered pitches. The pitch went from being described, I saw once, as a beach, went from a sandy beach to a muddy beach.
Mud bath.
Yeah.
Well, luckily the sun came out, and as they came in to lunch, Jim insisted on sitting on his own in the dressing room instead of the players upstairs. So he had half a pint and a sandwich. He always had a cheese sandwich. And somebody came in and said, the sun is coming out. And someone else said, that's it, we'll get them. Because I think they were about 112 for 2, and so there was time to survive in those conditions. But it just ball. In fact, I don't think there was much chance to sweep there because the ball was lifting, and McDonald said it was vicious. He was being hit in the chest, and they didn't have helmets in those days.
Absolutely not. Now, there's a dinner coming up, I'm told. Lord's Taverners in September the 18th. They're going to celebrate.
Yes. At Savoy. Brian Downing, the former president of Surrey, a very good man, who's a great cricket lover, his idea to set up this Jim Laker Trust to pay for young English spinners to go to Mumbai to learn how to spin and master the art. And they're going to be 20 of the great spin bowlers of all time. including Shane Warne, are going to be there. They're all being interviewed, and it's going to raise a lot of money for this fund, and I think it's tremendous that, and it's very exciting that someone like Rashid, the guy from York, just suddenly emerged, and Monty out there today, he's turning the ball almost as much as Jim. Incredible, really. And I think we need spin bowlers. I mean, it's a great.
Well, no, I mean, they're great for the game, aren't they? So that's September the 18th at the Savoy. Then Lord's Taverners. One assumes one can buy tickets and come along and enjoy it.
It's sold out ages ago.
Oh, it's sold out, is it?
No, they had to move it to a new venue.
To stand outside then.
They had 600 applicants and only 480 seats. So it's oversubscribed. Yes. No, I think it'll be a great evening, and true dedication and to Jim, because Lily, his wife, who's in tremendous form at the age of 84, she first said to me about this. She said, "Poor old Jim, people will forget about him now. What can we do?" Brian Downing got this dinner, and I got the book, and I really enjoyed it. And, the people I've met, 80 odd people, they've been so helpful, and I think Lily's very proud of Jim, and always has been.
Quite rightly so. All right, well, let's hope they all have fun at the dinner. Cool. Last word? No, you're fine. Good man. All right, Brian, thanks very much indeed for coming in to join us, and good luck with the book. Let's hope that sells well. And, well, here we are at Old Trafford, celebrating not just the 50 years of that anniversary, but, of course, an England win here today.